but... Will you pray with me? Gracious and holy God, we give thanks for this opportunity to gather and experience you. We give thanks for this moment of worship in which this is an opportunity to know, to listen, to follow the nudging of your Spirit in a place of community. May we recognize that this is the work of your people. We are faithfully here to follow in your guidance and what you have called us into. May that be so this morning and all the days before us. Amen. Well, friends, my name is Josh Esparza. I am one of the associate pastors here on staff, and it is a joy to be back with you for week 2 of our mini-series, Having Nothing, Possessing Everything. And if you joined us last week, you were here as we read through the miracle feeding of the 5,000, in which Jesus multiplies the loaves and fishes of abundance that comes from within a community to go and feed so much so that there is leftovers, there's excess to fill. And we discussed how Jesus challenges us to look beyond the immediacy and to foster opportunities of empowerment and transformation for our neighbors and friends. And then we began to wonder how we could discover abundance in our communities and also bear witness to the gifts that God has among us. So this morning, maybe the questions we're asking ourselves is, what's next? How do these things differ from what we currently do now? Or maybe some of you, and this is totally okay, are asking, why does it matter? And this morning, we will have some opportunity to spend some time talking about that, particularly because we are aware, and when we are cultivating an awareness of abundance, it requires intention. It requires a willingness to not have all the answers. And truthfully, something freeing, something liberating for myself has been to know and comfortable to say, I don't know. I don't have the answers. I don't have all the answers. It has changed my life spiritually and the ways that I can connect with God and understand that there's this great holy mystery that I can't fully fathom or understand, but believe to be true. That when I don't know, there's opportunities for friends and neighbors to come and teach me along the way. When I don't know, there's an opportunity for me to take a step back and for other people to lead. But also, when I don't know, it is a little vulnerable. It leads us to have to admit there are things here that we don't know yet. And when we choose to expand how we engage with our neighbors and with one another, we are connecting with one another and we are affirming the gifts of our people. Or choosing to expand this work means that we choose to make room for everybody. And most importantly, when we choose to do this work, we are choosing to be active participants in bringing God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. We are being agents of change to do this good work. So speaking of not knowing, there were a couple of weeks ago when several people came up to me and they said, Josh, what are we doing for Holiday Challenge? And I said, what's that? And they're like, well, we can give you some opportunities here to catch you up. Here's the history. Here's what we've done. Here's what it looked like before COVID. Here's what it looked like during COVID. And here's kind of where we are now. And Holiday Challenge is a great thing that our church does because it truly allows us to tether ourselves back to who we are as people of faith. The Holiday Challenge goes and it creates multiple opportunities to go and engage with the community, to serve a need, to cultivate hope for people. And a shameless plug here, if you're looking for a way to participate in the Holiday Challenge, we'll be at Boyd Elementary this Thursday evening serving their Thanksgiving dinner. We could use some servers and we could use some stuffing. So if you do one or both, we'd love to have you, and there's an opportunity for you to get connected with that. But the Holiday Challenge for me is quite profound because we recognize that the holidays bring so much. There's shopping, there's cooking, there's baking, there's Christmas photos, there's sending out Christmas cards, there's decorating, there's doing all these things. And in the midst of all that comes with it, we are trying to make core memories. We're trying to connect with the people that we love. We're trying to connect with family, long and far, or chosen. We are trying to connect with people and create something meaningful. But we're being pulled in so many different ways that things like the holiday challenge bring us back in. They center us, they connect us with one another, and they connect us to the faith that we so deeply believe in. They remind us of who we are, even in the midst of all the fast-paced hustle of the holiday season. So how might we connect with someone that we don't know yet? Holiday Challenge is a way to do that. Holiday Challenge is a way for you to come alongside people you don't know or people that we're serving and get to know a little more about their story and see what we may discover together. And in our text this morning, Paul also has something to say about that work together. That Paul reminds us in the church in Corinth that we have a purpose because of who God is. That Paul urges us to join in the sharing of God's love, not just through giving, but by connecting and affirming who they are. You see, Paul was passionate about connecting with people outside the church. Paul wanted to connect with the Gentiles. Paul wanted to connect with the poor. Paul wanted to connect with the unchurched because Paul believed that they had something to give to us as people of faith, but also they needed Jesus. There needed to be this opportunity to experience God's love and grace so radically that it changed them and it changes us in the process together. And Paul uses this text to point back to Jesus. And he says, the reason this matters is because of who we believe Jesus to be. Jesus is our prime example of giving and connecting with one another. And in fact, chapters 8 and 9 in Corinthians is so unique. Some scholars say that this is the most extensive discussion that happens in the New Testament about fundraising. That Paul is really leaning into these two chapters and saying, this is what it means to show up for one another. That Paul, in this time, he's agreed with Jewish Christian leaders in Jerusalem that churches need to happen for the unchurched, for the poor in Jerusalem. And so he is going to the other churches in the area, and he's collecting money to be able to help make that a possibility. Because for Paul, this isn't just an act of charity. This is an act of opportunity to demonstrate the validity and the gifts of all people. That the poor needed support, absolutely. But they also needed a space to belong and a space to flourish. Paul was inspired by Jesus. Jesus, who is the incarnation of God. God living among us. God who chose to be incarnated into a family and a community that was poor. God who chose to be like us. The inspiration comes from Jesus. And when Paul is talking with these people, he recognizes that maybe there are gifts and experiences known by the poor that we have yet to discover, but something that is rich and vibrant. And so I bring our attention back to verse 13 and 14, because Paul, as he's making this plea, he wants to make sure something's clear here. So verse 13 says, I do not mean that there should be relief for others and pressure on you, but it is a question of a fair balance between your present abundance and their need, so that their abundance may be for your need, and in order that there may be a fair balance. That fair balance can be translated into a variety of different words. The new updated version of the NRSV, that word is equality or equity. We see that in the CEB as well. There's this fairness, this mutuality that is present here. In these verses, Paul is saying, we give out of our abundance to those so that they may give out of their abundance to us. Not so that we lack and we struggle and we don't have what we need, but we give so that there is abundance for all. That there is no excess amongst God's people. There is a fair balance. Our sermon series, Having Nothing, Possessing Everything, is inspired by a book that, again, I said last week, but it's in the Missions Cafe. And if you're curious about more about the themes or principles of the book, I would invite you to pick up a copy. I'd love to take you out for coffee and talk about it more. It's a book that's really been helpful in trying to create structure into our continually expanding missiology. But what we see here is that this book provides us a framework. That this book shows us that Mike Mathers, a church he's leading in Broadway, says we're going to do things a little differently. We're going to start asking people, what are you good at? And what can you help teach others? What are you so passionate about? What are you so skilled in? What do you feel so compelled to share that you have a robust understanding of this and you be willing to share with others for the betterment of our community? As I look out in our congregation, I see people like that. I see people who have shared their gifts and their graces with this community, and we are better for it. And with that, then he takes it a step further with their church, and he says, okay, we're going to ask you, what are you good at? What can you share? And then instead of doing a needs assessment, we're going to do a gifts assessment. We're going to ask, what are those gifts that you have? What are the ways in which we can start strategically implementing opportunities for congregation and people outside the church to engage in the gifts that are present in and without and beyond the walls of the church? And church, let me say this, that is a weird thing to ask people. People are not accustomed to being asked, what are you so gifted in that you'd be willing to share with somebody else? Oftentimes, when we have this question, people don't know how to answer. Oftentimes, people will have these experiences and they say, I don't know. I'm working, I'm taking care of my kids, I'm making sure our household is in order. I'm just trying to make it to the weekend or till tomorrow. I haven't even spent time unpacking that in which I'm gifted or passionate about. And Jesus models this for us. Jesus not only does this awareness, this recognition, but then invites us to come and do that with him. And church, the excitement of this work is that when we begin to do this, people start to change. We begin to see people start to dream again. We begin to see that people have belief in themselves again. Friends, when we begin to do this, something holy happens. That when we create these opportunities, people come alive. People are inspired. People believe that they are worthy. And some might even say that the divine spark within them is reignited. A couple of years ago, I was doing some of this community engagement work, and I had an experience like this. There's this organization called Laundry Love, and they started in the Pentecostal church, but they are kind of ecumenical. There's a lot of people, a lot of different traditions that follow this process, but essentially it's a ministry organization that tries to create dignity through providing laundry services, whether that is education and empowerment opportunities or providing monetary value for people who are trying to do their laundry. And when I was doing ministry, I recognized that the laundromats in our area were really full on Friday nights, Saturday mornings, and definitely Sunday evenings. And I don't know how you guys do laundry. It never stops. There's always more. It is the definition of Sisyphean, right? Like it just keeps on going. And so every week you see that these laundromats are packed. And you've got people doing their laundry in the washer. You wait 45, 50 minutes, then they take it out, then they try and put it in a dryer, but there's not enough dryers as there are washers. So you've got people fighting over dryers because they want to dry their clothes. They want to go home. They're tired of being there. And there was an opportunity here. Recognizing that people were bored. People were just there waiting for their laundry to be done. People were fighting over outlets to be able to charge their devices. You had kids with nothing really to do except pretending to play the video games because there's no tokens in the video games. And so what we decided to do is to set up a table every other week and have quarters and laundry detergent and fabric softener, and we just wanted to connect with people. We saw an opportunity to come and take advantage of people with time to spare. And we didn't have to do it all. There was no bait and switch. There was not, you get quarters or laundry detergent, and now you have to talk to us. It was there as an opportunity. And we would go around and hand out quarters because there's nothing worse than needing 50 cents, but all you have is a $5 bill, and now you're walking around with $4.50 and change. So we would do these things. Just try and be hospitable but intentional. And in this time, there was an individual here who could not believe what we were doing. He could not believe that we were there with no agenda other than to connect with people. And so much so that he kept having conversations with us. He was like, can I take you to lunch? I want to just talk to you more about this. I said, no, that's really kind. It's not necessary. We're going to be here for another couple hours, et cetera, et cetera. And so then what he does instead is he insists. He goes to Churches down the road and he picks up a box of chicken, some biscuits, a couple of Cokes, and he comes back. He's like, can we share a meal together? So we make room and we clear off some of the space and we have a conversation for an extended period of time in which we're telling him why we're here. We want to get to hear people's stories. We want to know, what do you love about living here? What do you wish was different? What is something you could share with somebody else? And he was so perplexed by this concept. He said, no, he'd never seen or heard of a church do this before. The idea in which we would just go and be amongst the people to connect with the people. He was grateful and he, shook my hand, gave appreciation, but he just could not understand this. But in this process, wanted to be able to reciprocate this. And I left this out at 8 a.m., but I remember this now. He was so grateful that we were doing this, is that he gave us a $50 bill, and he said, this is for the change for everyone else who comes for the rest of the month. He was compelled to give back after seeing what we were trying to do as people of God, as connecting and empowering and affirming the lived experiences of our neighbors. And that this is what the opportunity presents itself here. And when we practice curiosity, we begin to wonder, how could things be different? And this is hard. I recognize that. Because there's this tension that begins to build. Some of you are saying, yes, Josh, let's be curious. Let's wonder how we could do this together. But also we recognize that people are hungry. We recognize that people do need clothes. We recognize that people do need housing. We recognize that people do need care. And so you hold both of these pieces and you say, how do you do them both together? I have some thoughts, but I don't have all the answers. I think we have to do them both together. We have to take them forward and recognize that we cannot stop achieving and attending to the needs of the people, but we can't just leave it there. We have to continue to foster and grow and create opportunities for hope and aspiration and dignity for our people and friends and neighbors as well. And I feel that tension with you. During the pandemic, as we're doing all the kind of different things that all the churches were trying to do, including yourselves, in which we're trying to support people, and we're hosting food banks, and we're hosting diaper drives, and we're supporting our elementary school, and we're doing this month in and month out, and we're getting PPE. We're doing all these things, and then you come in the next month, and you look at everything that has to be done, and you recognize it's exactly the same as the month before. People are still hungry. People are still struggling. People have stress and anxiety over their finances and their housing and their job opportunities. And you begin to wonder, how do we break out of this hamster wheel? Is this really making a difference? And the answer is absolutely it is. And I said this last week, and I want to reaffirm this again today, that the work that our church does matters and matters greatly. It matters that we're going to go to Boyd on Thursday to help serve 300 plus families Thanksgiving dinner. It matters that we made 200 stockings for MSG last week. It matters that we hold Kids Against Hunger. It matters that we're going to send bags for Send Hope starting in December. Those things matter. But there's also an opportunity to develop something in addition. We talked about a kaleidoscope last week. Add an additional lens to that work. Because the reality is, the work that we have to do is long and hard. And we're working the best within the system that we have, but we know that institutions as a whole, they have a purpose and function, but their practices, their rules, their regulations, they can act as barriers to seeing the gifts of people that we are here to serve. But we remember, we are not institutions. We are people of God. We, as followers of Jesus, are called to be stewards and caretakers of all that we receive from God. And so we remember Paul, and remember the fundraising that he's doing for this church in Jerusalem. Well, we read in Romans that Paul is successful in this fundraising. Paul is able to collect the funds necessary to create these churches in Jerusalem for the Gentiles and the poor, and that Paul is able to provide for them not just financially, but also to give them an opportunity to use their gifts to care for one another. So we, as people of faith, we are called to cultivate an awareness of our gifts that compel us to use them for the betterment of our neighbor. We remember that to whom much is given, much is required. And we have been given so much, not just monetarily, but through the incarnation of our God. May we use our gifts for people to be seen, for people to be loved, and for people to be empowered fully into who God created them to be. May we do it with love and joy.